Right, well, let's get on to you, Mo. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Jake, I met you for the first time, was that 3 weeks ago at York Hall?
Yeah, you did, yeah. And we talked about EastEnders and the name Big Mo.
Yes, apparently that I'm not the only person with that nickname.
Sadly not. It's quite a famous nickname in England and on EastEnders. But listen, you're making the name your own. I must say that from the work you're doing in boxing and all that. And we really just wanted to talk to you, Mo, about your journey, I suppose, to this point. How did you get into what you're doing? Where did you grow up? What your background in sports is? Where your love of boxing came from? We want to get the whole story. So maybe we'll go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was life like for you as a young man?
Yeah. So I was born in San Diego, California. Moved to Colorado outside of Boulder when I was pretty young. Pretty simple upbringing. I was raised by my father. Didn't have too much, but I was a good student. My dad was an academic, and so he imposed the importance of school on me from a young age. And then I was an athlete. I was always tall, always was big, things like that. So that led itself to me participating in a lot of sports. First sport I ever did was actually martial arts. And then I transitioned into basketball, football, American football, and things like that. And then I was fortunate enough to play American football in college. At the Division I level, I played at the University of Northern Colorado for 5 years of my life. I was able to get my undergrad and my MBA there as well. I was a much better student than I was a football player, actually. I ended up becoming the first full-time MBA ever from the school. They didn't have full-time MBA degrees available, but I still had eligibility left for my football career. So I, along with my best friend, petitioned the university to design our own full-time MBA program. So I became the youngest MBA from the school there, first full-timer, won awards as a student, things like that. My football career kind of ended when college was over. But what I discovered through our college is that I was a very confident and good public speaker. It was something that always came really easy to me. Maybe it's because my dad was an attorney and he taught me how to speak and give presentations. I have no idea, but it was always just pretty straightforward. And at the time, I wanted to work in entertainment. I was kind of intrigued by the industry, but I thought I was going to work on the business side. So being an agent or a manager or something like that. But then eventually I just decided that maybe I could take a stab at being the entertainer myself. But I didn't want to go the route of being an actor. An actor getting started is not exactly the best experience. I didn't want to go the route of a starving actor in LA sleeping on couches. I didn't want to do that.
It's tough.
And especially and I had helped, and I actually work a full-time job as well. I helped start a tech company here in America. So I helped start a social media and technology company while I was in grad school. So I also wanted to find a level of entertainment that could allow me to also work a full-time job and things like that. So, but I knew I wanted to take a stab at entertainment. And the transition that I felt that, was possible was going through commentary, almost a similar route that Wright Spencer would take, finish being a boxer, go into being an analyst or a commentator. That's common for American football, certainly. But at the time, I was really burnt out of American football and basketball and all those sports, but I liked combat sports. And I'm the type of person that I'm not afraid to get told no. So I just started calling local and regional promotions and saying, hey, I have no media experience, but I think I have good energy. I'm young, I'm passionate, I talk well. Are you looking for a color commentator? And I came across one that was. They're called Sparta in Denver. And I remember they brought me down to the studio and had me audition as both a commentator and as an announcer. At the time, they had their announcer. And the story goes, apparently, as I was doing like sound checks and everything in the room next to it, and apparently the fighters were doing a photo shoot for the upcoming show in the other room. And apparently they all stopped and were like, who's that you got in the other room? He's pretty good. And, who's that? And blah, blah, blah. So I remember I did my first show did well as a commentator, brought a lot of energy. But I remember I saw the ring announcer. I was like, that's more my speed. So I pestered the promoter to let me do it. Eventually, they let me become the announcer. And when I started, I said, look, if I'm going to do this, I want to be the best at it. And started branding myself. I used to wear sunglasses in the ring, went by Big Mo, went viral a couple times, and here we are.
Do you know what? It's an incredible story, really, Mo. For someone who's only 27 years of age, you've achieved a lot, you know, and you're a brilliant example of, if you want to chase your dreams, go get your dreams. Anything's possible, because, you know, you've carved out your own path, really, and you're creating your own legacy within what you do, like, because you've got a distinctive voice. Firstly, I suppose what I'm going to ask is, how, you know, when did you get that voice? Do you know what I mean? At what age did you have that voice? Because it is so unique. It's like, it stands out, and that's a big part of what you do.
No, that's a good question, and it's kind of funny. So when I started out, I very much liked the Bruce Buffer-esque of the super high energy but I didn't know how to do it, and a lot of people don't know how to do it, and a lot of people that try to exude that much energy, they end up screaming or shouting, and it's hard to listen to.
Yeah, you switch off, don't you? If it's someone shouting, after a while, it's just it's noise, isn't it? Yeah,
correct. And so I had to figure that out eventually. But what was good about what I was doing is I was getting a lot of reps on the regional scene. I was just reps, one week, small show, 50 fans, 100 fans, but I just got to craft it. And then COVID happened, and everything shut down, but we were able to do fights in Wyoming, because Wyoming is the state above us. It's about an hour and a half drive from Denver to Cheyenne, and they didn't really care about COVID. And so we did fights at a bar, we did them outside, you know, we did it in front of 200 people, and we did it at an outdoor venue. So I got to get a lot of reps, while the rest of the industry, for the most part, was kind of shut down. So I was like, all right, well, now is the time for me to really kind of find my voice, figure out how I want to do it. And eventually I just kind of got it. And I just was able to craft the voice and things like that. But no, the voice is definitely important, and it's definitely unique. I actually ended up going to an ear, nose, and throat specialist, because I wanted to get an idea of how my vocal cords worked. And they shoved a camera down my throat, and they had me actually announce in the doctor's office with this camera, so they could see how my voice reacted to certain things. And what they noticed is that I actually have my vocal cords, how they're constructed. Most people's vocal cords open and shut like this. They close flush. Mine actually overlap. And so apparently that's how I can almost get a growl to how I announce. And I actually discovered that when I was young. I played the saxophone. I was in the band growing up. And so I learned how to growl into a saxophone, and I've actually figured out how to apply that to when I speak. And then that's kind of what allows for the interesting kind of growl to how I announce. So it's,
so that's a technique, Mo, is it, that you've developed there?
Yeah, it's finding out, like, I'm OCD and with my job, and I approach my job like I was an athlete, in the sense of I'm trying to figure out how I can really be the best at what I do. And that's my goal, is to be the best at what I do. I make no bones about it. And what I've realized is, look, I'm a lot younger than everyone else doing it. I'm starting 15 years ahead of time of when most people do. I have the chance to make this something significant. So I want to take all the measures I can to try to figure out the best way to do it.
How did Boxer come across you, Mo? Because the first time we met each other was at a show down in Bournemouth, wasn't it? Chris Billam Smith was boxing. I think that's the first time I come across you. And they said to me, they were using a different guy, Buddy, before, and they said, "Well, you've got this new announcer. Tell me what you think. Like, do you know what I mean? Let me have a listen to him and see what you think." And then, like, I saw you up on the stage and I saw you do your thing, and I was like, "Wow." Do you know what I mean? Like, you just go into your zone and you go. That's probably where you know, the acting that you've done in the past or whatever comes into your own, because you go into character and you go bang and you just deliver. And I remember from being down, I went, that guy's good, really good, because you had this distinctive voice. And I went, it's fresh, it's new, what he's bringing to it, there's that entertainment feel about it. And that's, you know, with the changing of the world and the way that we're going, that's what's needed. It's like proper showbiz. But what I will say is from then till now, and what are we talking there? Was that like 12 months ago, or was that? Yeah,
basically, almost about a year now.
Yeah, about a year ago now. I think the improvements have just been insane. Like you can tell that it's interesting what you said there about your voice and how you have to tone your voice and sort of like, so it's not just about shouting and doing it. I suppose it's the same as a singer or whatever. You have to
technique, isn't it?
Yeah, technique and get the right vocal cords, etc. And mate, over the last 12 weeks, and I saw you on the last show, where was we? Savannah Marshall. Yeah, when Savannah Marshall last boxed, and you was there and was just looking at it against Deverne. And I'm looking and I'm going, wow, mate, he just got into zone, but it's not like you're shouting now. It's like you're singing, but out loud. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's not, you're speaking. Yes. You know what I'm saying, don't you? It's like the growl. You seem to tone the growl, and does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's very technical, isn't it?
It's very that's what I mean. Like, people won't realise how technical it is.
Yeah, because you've got a microphone as well, and I suppose the quality, depending where you're doing it, is not always going to be crystal, is it? So I guess you have to. It's a little bit like David Diamante. You know, when he announces the names, he does it twice. The history behind that is because in New York or wherever they used to do all the ring announcers, the microphones were always shit, weren't they? So they would say the name to that side of the room, and then the other side wouldn't hear it. So you would announce again, Oliver. So that was his kind of idea.
No, the tricky thing is that there's a difference between shouting and projecting. What I basically do is I throw my voice. How I've trained myself and what I learned, because I studied different. How I got good at this, to be honest, is I started studying other types of individual entertainers. And so there's no information on how to be a ring announcer. You can't Google, how do I be a ring announcer? There's no textbook, there's no whatever, right? It's a very niche industry. There's like 50 people that do it, just period.
But it's like a boxer. It's like a boxer who studies other boxers as well, and you take a little bit from here and a little bit from here, and a little bit from here, and then you.
But what I did is I was a boxer that was starting to study other sports. So what I was doing as an announcer is I was like, all right, well, what other types of individual entertainers are there? So I started watching stand-up comedians. I started watching even like professional public speakers, professional politicians. I started watching church pastors. I started watching people whose job it is to elicit a reaction from a group of people, because that's ultimately what my job is. So I started paying attention to how they speak, how they present, how they have inflections in their voice. And a big thing too is that none of them, when they're in a big crowd, they don't shout. What they do is they're able to take their voice and increase the volume, but not to a point where it becomes difficult to listen to. So that's what I basically figured out how to do, is I can announce, but I can take my voice and I can throw it to the other end of the AO arena, and it sounds the same that it would sound ringside, or it would sound up in the rafters when there's 20,000 people there. Mm-hmm. And that's also the reason why my voice, I used to lose my voice a lot. I don't lose my voice anymore. I don't. Like, you can listen to me at the end of the show. It may have toned down a little bit. It probably got tired throughout the night, but I'm not struggling to get words out or anything like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
You've really taken on a scientific approach, haven't you, Mo, in terms of this job and how you're going to approach it.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of like, it's like you say, if you want to be the best at something, then you have to explore all routes to get to that point. Can I just go back to what the question Spencer asked you? Is what about Boxer? How did Boxer come around?
Yes.
How did that come into your life and the journey to the UK? How did that happen?
So I was I was starting to book some shows that were national, and then I got hit up to do the Eddie Hall versus Hafthor Bjornsson giant fight in Dubai, and I went and did that. And that show went super viral. The press conference went crazy, and I hosted that. And then the fight happened, and I chose to wear sunglasses for the show. So I obviously had a visual aesthetic to that, and that piqued a lot of people's curiosity of who I was. And that fight got seen by a shitload of people. People don't understand how big that fight was.
Sure.
And that's where I got a message from Boxer. I got a message from Baz while I was in Dubai, saying, "Hey, like your work, let's talk sometime." And I was like, "All right, great." And then it went dead. I was like, I didn't hear from him. I didn't know anything. I didn't know much about him, but I was like, all right, well, you know what? Nothing happens. No big deal. And then they hit me up a couple months later. They're like, "Hey, we'd love to do a test run with you." And I was like, great. So I ended up doing that. And I was like, "Hey, let's do this. Don't pay me. I'll do it for free. Let me show you what I can do. Let me show you the job that I can do." Because at this time, and I want to say this is not meant to sound negative or arrogant, but at the time I had replaced 5 or 6 different announcers. I understand. I look at the job very objective. For me to have the job, someone doesn't. There's only one person that does it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I was very confident in my ability to make a statement with how I was doing the job. I was very confident that people would like me. And I was also very confident that the British fans would liken themselves to a more energetic announcer. So I was very confident. I was like, "Look, don't pay me. I'll come out there. I'll do the show. I think it'll go great." They're like, "Awesome." So I came out there, and the show was electric, man. That first show in Bournemouth for Chris Phillips-Smith was a energetic atmosphere. It was like 3,000 people, but it was diehard fans. And I actually think it was the perfect first show for me because it was intimate, but it was still energetic. They could respond well to my type of announcing. It just kind of it just fit and it made sense. And I think it was the right way to start.
Yeah, I mean, you could like in that arena, Jake, where we was. I think there's 4,000 people down in Bournemouth, and I remember going down there because it was the first show that I'd done in Bournemouth as well with Chris Phillips.
They love Chris Phillips-Smith down there anyway.
Yeah, but Jake, the atmosphere in there was like it was like a throwback. It was like going back in times of when, like, say, when I was boxing in the 90s and whatnot, 90s, 2000s. When you go back. And people used to, it was like hardcore boxing fans. So they used to lose their shit. And it was like just really, and Chris Phillips-Smith has got that sort of support. So for someone like Mo, who's very loud, very energetic, and I saw the vision with that. And I was like, that's why I said to Baz and I said to Ben, I went, "He's your man." I go, because I see the vision. I see like they're a new outfit and I know what they're trying to put their own mark on it. They want to develop things and make things fresh and new. Do you know what I mean? Because the old style looked tired. Do you know what I mean? It's like a very dated. And we need to put a fresh spin on it. And you fitted perfectly into that because of the energy that you had, you know, the announcements that you made, getting the crowd to stand up on their feet and all that sort of stuff and raise some noise, all that sort of stuff was new and fresh. And it was like, but the crowd reacted to it. So they're like, whoa, they're just losing their shit as well. So that was the perfect environment to do that because they were hardcore boxing fans. And that was some night that.
What I also figured out was, so in my opinion, the 2 gold standards of the industry are the Buffer brothers. I think that they are unquestionably the best announcers to ever exist. I think that Bruce with the UFC is perfect. And I think that Michael with boxing for 40 years was perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I believe that I actually saw that there was a possibility for a happy medium between the 2. Mm-hmm. I think that Bruce's level in boxing probably be just a tad too much.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that there was room for Michael for there to be just a little bit more energy to it. Mm-hmm. So when I was watching, I was like, that's what I have to do. Yeah. I have to find a happy medium between the pure class and charisma of Michael and the passion and the energy of Bruce. And I think I can really do something dynamic for the boxing market. So how I present myself, how I speak is very important, but at times dial up the energy, dial up the presentation to get everyone involved. What I've always said with boxing, and Jake, I think you actually could have an interesting perspective on this. I think a lot of boxing promotions, they think that the competition is other boxing promotions. For example, if you ask Boxer, who's our competition, people may say, oh, it's Matchroom or Queensbury or Top Rank or whatever. I disagree. I think it goes a lot deeper than that. I think our competition is any other thing that someone could watch instead of our show. Our competition is EastEnders. Our competition is F1. Our competition is another sport. Our competition is them going to a concert. Our competition is them watching a movie. It's any other form of content.
Yeah, because everyone's fighting for your attention, aren't they? Yeah.
Exactly. So if we're a broadcast, if we're a network, our goal is to put on the best piece of content possible. And I have a direct impact in that. I'm the only person that talks to both the in-arena crowd and the crowd watching at home. So I need to have a style that can talk to both audiences in a way that gets them engaged in what we're doing, because we're saying, hey, we want you to sit down and watch this 4-hour boxing broadcast. That's a tall order.
But effectively, what you're doing, Mo, is you're chatting, the way that you're announcing and trying to touch the people that are in house and the people that are watching on the broadcast. What you're doing is trying to get the broadcast and feel like they are in house. Because once they're engaged, they're invested, aren't they? And that's exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. And if we want people to spend $30 for a pay-per-view, $400 for a ticket, whatever it may be, we have to give them a good show, or we are ripping them off. The biggest complaint about boxing, pretty much ever, from what I can gather, is that boxing is expensive. It costs money to watch it. It costs money to go to it. It costs money to participate in it. It's just an expensive sport, and that's not going to change. All right, well then the change needs to be the value that we give the consumer needs to go up. If we're not going to drop the price down, if it's not going to become less expensive, then what we have to provide needs to be elevated to balance it out. And I'm fortunate enough to play one role in that conversation of to what we provide a consumer.
You are right, though, actually, Mo, because in terms of a boxing fight, when you break it down, you're bookending it, aren't you? You're introducing it, then you got the fight, and then you're putting a full stop on the end of it, aren't you? So you're kind of taking the audience through from beginning to end, aren't they? You're sort of.
And you just brought up an extremely valuable point. What I figured out early in my career was I recognized how consistent the ring announcer is. When you watch a broadcast, the ring announcer is actually the most consistent person throughout the entire show. The commentators are off camera. The analysts and the host desks only go off between fights. The fighters only do their fight and maybe an interview, and the referees switch out. Yeah. So the most consistent person the whole time is the ring announcer. So how I present myself is very important. How I dress is very important. How I establish authority is very important. How I carry the pace of the show is very important. What I've said is that there's a difference between a ring announcer and a guy that reads names. I've met a lot of people that just go up there, read names off of a card and leave. I don't do that. That's not, I've had promoters tell me, hey, tone it down. Hey, don't do that. No, listen, this is how I do the job. Either you like it or you don't, it's all good. But this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to introduce people. This is how I'm going to set the tone. And it works. And if you don't like it, it's all good. I appreciate the offer. I appreciate the work, but this may not fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's knowing that you add value, Mo, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, that as you say, that's kind of an integral part. That when you think back to Michael Buffer and you think of all the announcers, you know, those iconic fights, the Tyson fights, and all of those, they wouldn't be those. When you think of those fights, you think of Buffer, don't you? You think of his amazing announcing, the guy in the suit, and the impression that the glamour and the impression that he gave you. Like,
well, he left a mark, didn't he? He left a mark.
Yeah.
You don't just remember the fight; you remember the you know what I mean, the announcement. Like, everyone lose their shit, their hairs on the back of your neck go up when he speaks. And it's really opened my eyes, like, to what Mo's saying there, like going within the layers of what he actually does. Do you know what I mean? It's more than just reading out the name and belting out the name and getting into the zone and doing that. When he breaks it down, and the work that he does and the people that he studies to make Big Mo, create Big Mo. Honestly, it's a fascinating chat. It really is, because there's so many more layers to what you do than what people see. Like, all they see is the surface. You reading out, bang, getting into the zone. They go, wow, this kid is great. You're a character on your own, and people do remember that shit. Do you know what I mean? Because
so
it's very important.
I love the sport. I do. I love boxing as a sport. I love all combat sports. It's my favorite sport to watch by far. But what I fell in love with was the entertainment aspect of it all. There's nothing like it. If you go back and watch Liam Smith's walkout against Chris Eubank Jr. in Manchester earlier this year, there is nothing like that in the whole world. And I remember I was the first one in my friend group of me and my college football teammates to get into fighting. And I remember I used to put fights on during the pre-games before he went to the bars or to a party or whatever. And I remember none of my friends understood the sport. They didn't know how it was scored or what the rules were or how long the rounds were or whatever the hell. But they could relate to was when the lights went down, the pyro hit, the music hit, the announcer did the setting, the presentation. That's what I fell in love with. That's what I really enjoy.
Yeah,
it is 100% theater. There's no other sport like it in the whole world. That's what I enjoy.
And you're right in what you say there. That Liam Smith ring entrance when he boxed Chris Eubank Jr. was absolutely. I've been at fucking many of them. Although I'd say another that comes to mind when Ricky Hatton boxed Costa Zoo at the AO Arena as well. Wow, mate, that was the fucking best atmosphere I've ever been in. They stuck to American times, and so by 2 o'clock in the morning, everybody was pissed. You're seeing people falling down balconies, like falling fucking down layers.
But I want you to understand what you just said. And here's my whole goal. Since I started announcing, I've done all 3 of Chris Smith's fights. I've done Shields Marshall, and I've done Eubank Smith, right? I've heard all people go, those are that's the best atmosphere I've ever heard. Oh my God, Chris Smith and Vitality saying that's the best atmosphere I've ever seen. Oh, Shields Marshall, that's the best atmosphere I've ever seen. Oh, Liam Smith, Chris Eubank, that's the best atmosphere. Do you see the kind of what we're building here? Absolutely. That's the whole point. I want to be a conduit to help bring people to this sport. I want to
engaging the crowd.
I want to see how we can take boxing and make it big again. People forget that boxing was the #1 sport ever in the history of the world. There was a time where boxing was the #1 sport. That's something that MMA has never been. That's something that UFC's never been. Kickboxing's never been. Boxing has been the most popular sport in the world before. It's fallen off a little bit, but it's been there. And I want to help be a conduit to help do it again. I want to take boxing in different industries. I want to get other people involved. And I think that the presentation and the entertainment value is an amazingly simple way to do it. It's a lot simpler than teaching someone boxing or teaching them all the belts or teaching them, where he's from or what his record is or Southpaw versus Orthodox. That's hard. That'll be learned over time. Let's get them involved with the entertainment value. That's how we can get someone into it.
Yeah.
You're right, actually, Mo, because when you do your job well, actually it becomes part of the show, and you you in the crowd, you look forward to the you look forward to the announcer, don't you? Because then that's when you plug in, isn't it? That's when you're fully engaged. That's when you plug in. Right, this is the fight starts from the moment the light comes on the announcer. Right, here we go. Do you know what I mean?
It's a show. It's a whole spectacle. It's not just the fight, is it? Like saying, you're going now to an event. You're going to a show, and that's the difference. And when you go back,
it just elevates it. Then it elevates it just takes it to another level, doesn't it?
Yeah, you go back into like the 70s and you listen to the ring announcers in the 70s in Britain. This is Mo, and you go and you hear him and you go, ladies and my lords, ladies and gentlemen, in the red corner, fighting out of, you know what I mean? That's how.
Yeah, innit? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was very like very dull, but like
last orders at the bar, ladies.
yeah. And over in the blue corner, fighting out of Barnet with a professional record of 10 wins, 1 defeat, and 3 KOs. I said it was like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're going, shut up, mate. I want to get on with the
shut up, mate. Get the boxes in, yeah.
But now they want to hear Mo and do his shit and all that. They just watch him. But it does create, and you're right in what you say there, Mo, because you just mentioned all those shows and everyone's going, that was the best ring walk, that was the best atmosphere. And there is a reason for that, because you're engaging the crowd, and that's really important. How different do you think the British audience is to the American audience?
Oh,
I mean,
I'm so happy
the British
you asked
audience
that.
is like they are the most passionate fans ever, right?
I think that me bringing this more energetic style of announcing, the fact that I get to basically introduce it to the world on a big stage with British fans, I actually think is a match made in heaven. Because the British fans are, God damn, fucking incredible. Like, it's so different. Because like I played college football in America, and I would say that's usually the most kind of raucous environment. But it's more energetic because it's a lot of kids. It's a lot of 18-year-olds or 21-year-olds that are drinking and stuff like that. British fans match the energy, but with fully grown men. It's crazy. And I remember I was in Bournemouth for Chris Smith, and I was like, damn, the arena's kind of empty. And then one of the production guy goes, oh, no. They're all here. They're just at the bar. They just go to the bar between every single fight. And I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. But no, the British fans are, listen, I love being an American. I'm proud to be American. But the British fandom and how into you guys get into sports, how much you guys back your communities, the guys that represent your different cities and townships, that's unparalleled in my opinion.
So Mo, was that part of the attraction to take the boxer job, that you would be based in the UK? And had you been to the UK before? Did you know what to expect when you came over here? How was that moving from the USA to here?
So that's a good question. So I was hustling my whole career on the smaller scene. I called everyone. I have a little bit of experience in sales. I know how to pick up the phone. I'm not afraid to get told no. I spoke to every promotion in the damn world. And I became friends of secretaries, and I tried to get up, get on the phone with the decision makers and the promoters and all that stuff, right? And I got told the same thing by a lot of promoters. We have our guy. That was my answer. Well, we have our guy already. We have our announcer. And my answer was, all right, well, what if I'm better? And they would say, what does that mean? Like a better announcer? I would go, no. That's being a better announcer is subjective. Some people like ketchup, some people like mustard, some people like Michael, some people like Bruce, right? What I'm saying is what if I can be a bigger asset for your brand? What if you can use me? What if I can be a part of your show and be a part of your brand and use me in commercials and all that type of stuff? What if you could actually use me more? And they never really had an argument against that. But what I figured out was the promotions were just nervous to take a shot on a younger guy. That's honestly what the answer was.
Yeah.
The answer was the average announcer is 55 years old. This 25-year-old kid is calling me. I have announcers with 20 years of experience. This kid has one, right? Why on earth would I put him on my network? Why would I put him on my show? I understand why they're nervous, whatever. So really what it was more so is Sky being the massive platform that it was, they gave me a job offer. And I was like, holy shit, all right. 16 million households or whatever the hell Sky's reach is. I started understanding the history of Sky and how important they are in boxing, that it pretty much was, you had HBO boxing in America and you had Sky boxing internationally, right? Those were the two preeminent boxing channels, basically. So I was like, damn, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. So it was more so that they approached me and they gave me an opportunity, and I'm really thankful. And now it's kind of showing that, it was never an age thing, right? It was never, that was just an irrational fear that some of these promotions had about about using me, and Sky's actually embraced it, and I've become a part of their show, and they get creative with how they use me. I started the show last time in the crowd, so it's been cool being in the UK, and I've said it's, I'm almost living my own version of Ted Lasso, right? I'm this American that gets to spend time in the UK and learn the culture and things like that, and it's become my second home, and I love it.
Do you know what I think it was with Sky after Eddie Hearn left to do his own thing on DAZN and whatnot? I think when they were looking for a promoter, they were looking for someone young, fresh, and that were going to bring, a different dynamic to boxing. And I think that's what it was. And they obviously found Ben Shalom because he had this great vision. He was doing stuff on with Boxer before, and they liked the brand, and they thought, we can work with this guy. He's only young, and like as he starts at grassroots, we can grow and develop champions. But what they were doing there was they recognized they got a vision. And I think with Ben Shalom and his team, they were looking for someone like yourself because you were different. You were standout. Do you know what I mean? It was like you say, that there's an announcer and there's a showman, and you're the showman. Do you know what I mean? You're bringing more than just reading out the names. But that is facts. And I think so you sort of fit into the package and into the brand and to the idea of what they're trying to achieve. And I think that's what it is. So it was just like timing, really. It was just,
I think so.
It was a perfect marriage. You going over to Boxer starting on Sky, and you just all growing together. It's just like, it puts it all together. It's the perfect package.
I think so. And I've been very, very fortunate to work with who I work with. I get to work with people like yourself. I get to learn from people. And what I learned and the reason why I love entertainment is because I like applying the team aspect to it. If you ever see me on fight nights, like I'm very much a team guy. I'm telling them, hey, let's have a good show. Let's, I like getting there early and rehearsing and meeting the team. And I'm not a diva, right? I've heard negative reputations about announcers in the past. I'm not going to name names, but I've heard negative things about them, that they can be kind of selfish people. I'm not. I was trained.
You're a grafter.
I was trained that in American football, how my coach trained me is that if everyone does their 111, because there's 11 players on the field, if everyone does their 111, then we're going to be successful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have my 111. I have my 111. The director has her 111. Johnny Nelson has their 111. Matt Macklin has their 111. Everyone on the team has their component of the show that they are responsible for. Well, shit. If we all do our job, and if we all do a good job, and if we all prepare accordingly, if we're all on timing with our cues, if we're all in communication, we're going to have a good show. Sure. And objectively, I can sit here and say Sky Sports has the best boxing show from a presentation standpoint. Mm-hmm. It's untouchable. It's untouchable. And I'm happy to say that I like being a part of it. And I love entertainment because I like that it's everyone's individualistic. It's like a TV show. Everyone's individualistic. They all got casted separately. They're all individual people. But for a period of time, they all have to come together and they have to work together to produce something that people want to enjoy.
Yeah, I worked on EastEnders for 15 years, Mo, and it's a soap, 4 episodes a week, and that show wouldn't work unless everyone came together, worked as a team.
Yes.
Yeah, you're just one cog in that team, and it's you have to everyone just pull in the right direction. Absolutely, it's really refreshing to hear that, actually. And where does your drive come from, Mo? Where does your drive and ambition come from, do you think?
So I think when I was raised, my dad was a very active parent, and he very much raised me on the standpoint of, if you're interested in something, let's explore it, right? He was the type of parent to where, and this is how I believe all parents should be, is it's like, all right, if your kid's interested in space, right, get him a book on space, read the book on space with them, right? Be involved, let them explore different routes that they want to go. And I always was that type of person. I didn't like being kind of in one group or one fitting. I'm one type of person. So like I played sports, but I didn't want that to be my identity. I liked being in the band, and I was a nerd, and I liked school, and I liked just doing a bunch of different stuff. And for that reason, I kind of always had high expectations of me achieving high success. I always saw success as being really attainable. And I always was the type of person of, I can kind of do whatever I want. It's kind of up to me as to how hard I want to work or how much I want to commit to something. And so when I started ring announcing, I just saw this massive gap in the industry. I remember I charted everything out and I built this big database of ring announcers. I was like, all right, well, if there's no primary research on ring announcers, I'll do the primary research. I'll do the investigation. I'll read what's out there. I'll study the articles. And so I built this giant database of all the ring announcers, who they are, who they announce for, what their catchphrase is, blah, blah, blah. And I started just identifying trends. And I found a couple trends. The first trend was the age. The average ring announcer is 55 years old, started when they're 40. They've been in it for 15 years, and then they usually kind of get a big break on a big fight. It's like, all right, well, that's a gap for me. No one young is doing it. And then what I also saw was that after the top 4 or 5 announcers, there's really nothing else, right? So there was a massive opportunity for me to do it. So I was like, all right, well, I need to press this as hard as I can. And I need to dedicate myself, and I need to utilize social media. None of these announcers utilize social media. None of them use TikTok or Instagram or anything like that. I need to flood the market. I need to push as much as I can out there. That's what I need to do. So for me, like, it was more so, I saw the end goal. I saw that it was attainable. And I just, the one factor was, how much do I want to put into it? How much do I want to push it? Yeah. I believe heavily in affirmation and visualization. And that was a key part of what I was doing, is that when I would announce in front of 100 people, I didn't imagine that I was in front of 100 people. I imagined that I was at Madison Square Garden or the O2. So like when people ask me if I get nervous, I don't, because I practiced in a way and I announced in a way that I mentally wasn't there. I mentally was at the O2 or I was at Vitality Stadium. Yeah.
That's very, very much the thought of an actor as well, though, Jake, isn't it? You do that. You take yourself to a different place, etc. Do you know what I mean? You just put yourself into character. Is probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, and I think as well, like as Mo says, you've got to mentally prepare yourself for going into different situations. So, like if I'm an actor doing 222 in the West End, then you've already visualized being out in front of 1,000 people and doing the show and being out on that stage. So when it happens, as Mo says, you're not in a place of discomfort because you've been there. You've already seen it. You've already kind of you're already comfortable in that space, in that headspace, and in that environment. It's what you set out to do. So
I want to be an actor. I really want to try my hand at acting. I want to commit to it. I want to see where I can take it, because I think what I do is kind of a performance, and I don't say that, and I don't want that to sound like I think the show's about me, because it's not about me even fucking remotely. However, I do play a role in it. I do have a way to increase the energy of a show, and for that reason, it's a bit of a listen. My job is ridiculous. What I tell everyone is my job is fucking crazy. I get into a ring. I wear a tuxedo. I yell information at people that they already know. Like, my job is to introduce someone that the people there and are watching already know. And I just yell information about this person, and there's a nickname, and it's ridiculous. My whole job is ridiculous. Like, it's the craziest thing, but it's badass. It works. It's cool. People can engage with it. They enjoy it, but I don't know. It's crazy.
Mo, but that's you just hit the nail on the head there. That's what you have to do, though. You're in an arena with 20,000 fucking people, and they're there, and you've got to get them in the zone. Do you know what I mean? You have to bring them. You've got to put them, like, you've got to raise the bar with those. Do you know what I mean? You've got to get them all invested in what's going on. So it is important. Do you know what I mean? Because when the fight kicks off and the bell rings, that's it. They're going then anyway. But if you can get them to a level before that bell rings, then it just creates this magical atmosphere. And that's, I think, the importance of a good ring announcer. That it's not just about yelling out their names. It's about engaging with the audience and getting them to lose their shit before the fight goes on. And I think that's important. What's the best ring announcement you've done? The best atmosphere that you've been so far?
Oh, that's
the most memorable one for you.
So the most memorable and my favorite. Best atmosphere, I would say probably was, Chris Smith second show against Armin Zojai when he sold out the International Center again. And that's when they were teasing him fighting for a world title and Vitality. So like the rumblings about Chris Smith doing a big show was there. So the energy was crazy. I remember that. It was before Christmas. That one was great. Liam Smith in Manchester was unreal. So the Shields Marshall was crazy because it was a higher percentage of women viewers. So that allowed
demographic, wasn't it?
It was a different, but my most memorable announcement, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, was when I introduced Joseph Parker by his Samoan name. That was the coolest thing for me because
against Joe Joyce, this is.
Yeah, Joe Parker.
Joe Parker. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So when Joseph Parker fought Jack Massey on Liam Smith undercard, I remember, because I played with a lot of Polynesian players, that they oftentimes have a Western name because their tribal name is incredibly difficult to pronounce. But I think their tribal names are so sick. So I was like, I want to introduce him by his name. So I found an interview where a Polynesian guy said his name. I studied how to say it. And I was like, I'm going to introduce him by his Polynesian name. And I remember I did it. I remember Tyson Fury was sitting ringside. He thought it was sick. I got out of the ring, and that was my first time meeting Tyson, and he loved it. Joseph said it was one of the coolest things he'd ever seen. And then I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of messages. I got emails. I got letters even from Polynesian people that told me, we've never been represented like that on a level. We've never heard our culture be talked about. They said that even commentators in Australia and New Zealand struggle to say it. Even being from that area, they don't know how to say it. It went viral on social media. It did 1 million views on TikTok and 1 million views on Instagram. And I got flooded by Polynesian people thanking me, people calling me Uso and Oos. And that is by far the coolest moment of my career, because it showed that my job goes further than what I thought it was. Brilliant. Now my job has a cultural component and has a meaning behind it, depending on what people can hear from it. I mean, I never thought of it like that, but when these people were saying, we've just never seen our culture represented like that, that's my most memorable one by far. And that's great, is because that wasn't the main event. It wasn't a title fight. Right. It wasn't anything like that, but it was still an important moment.
Wow. Brilliant. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. This has been fascinating. It really has, Mo.
Thanks, man.
Getting your story. And do you know what has been really fascinating for me on this podcast is you going through the layers of what it really takes. And, your journey to become a ring announcer. And, but people just look at it and they look at the TV and think, that's it. A guy in the ring doing that. But your journey and what you actually done to create Big Mo is fantastic, mate. It really is fascinating. It really is.
Well, I want to thank you guys, Jake. I want to thank you. This is cool for me because I enjoy sitting down with actors. I think that it's a fascinating industry that I want to get a part of one day, and hopefully you and I can. Hey, maybe you and I can share the screen one day. That'd be kind of cool.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Listen, if you ever need any advice or anything like that, just get my number from Spencer. Reach out and listen. I can hopefully point you in the right direction. I think you've got passion and drive. I think that's more than half of it. So listen.
Amen. Well, Jake, like I was saying, man, I appreciate it. I will most certainly pick your brain. I like learning from people that know more than me. I like learning about the industries that I want to work in. And Spencer, I want to thank you, man, for having me on, and also just for being honestly one of my first friends there. I think when I got to the UK, I think people were like, who the hell is this guy? He's got the slick back hair and he wears a tuxedo, and he's, people probably thought I was a douchebag. Like, people's first reactions is they think like,
well, do you know what
and I understand it. Like,
bro, the British mentality is, this is what the British mentality is straight away. It's like, if you're coming into a new environment or whatever, the British mentality is like, who the fuck's that?
Yes.
What's he? And
Yes.
so you got to break down the barriers. You know what I mean? To become one. And the
so
boxing world's very like that as well.
And you were a pivotal part in that, and my confidence, because you were someone that not only was integral to the boxing community, you understood production. You're part of Talk Sport, and you're a part of big shows that reach a lot of people. And you're also just a fan of sports, and you're just a guy that enjoys watching sports regardless of what it is. So you kind of checked a lot of boxes in terms of like people that can teach me and who I can learn from. Mm-hmm. So for you to become my friend, man, I'm really, really appreciative of you, and you've done a lot to help me. So I really appreciate you, Spencer. You're a good man, and you care about the people that are close to you, and I thank you for that.
An absolute pleasure, Mo. You know, when you listen, you instantly know whether someone's good, whether someone's bad, or whether someone's got an attitude, whether someone's a fucking diva. But you're just what I would call real. And that's really important. You know, you're just a genuine guy that does a great job. And I think you're fresh, and I think you put a new, you know, you stamped your own mark on the sport as it's changing. We're in a time now where the world's changing, you know, everything's changing, sport is changing, and you fit right into that market. And I want to salute you for that, my friend. I think you're doing a great job. You carry on. I think you're improving all the time. And love what you do, Mo. And you're a great man as well.
Hey, thank you, fellas. I appreciate that. Look, I love entertainment because it's an escape for people. I think the world is a messed up place with a lot of dissension, and people hate each other, and there's tension everywhere. And if a boxing show can be a 4-hour escape for people to let whatever the hell is going on behind them, or, you know, just ignore it for a while and watch two people fight and watch a ring announcer act like a fucking idiot in the ring, then you know what? I've done my service to people. So that's why I love entertainment, man. So I appreciate you guys.
Listen, Mo, do you want to close the show? Close the show, bro.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you tuning in on your different podcast channels, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Apple, or I don't know what the hell else someone uses to listen to podcasts, I want to introduce to you the defending, the tag team champion podcast host, live from the Pound for Pound podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Spencer and Jake and myself. Make sure you follow Pound for Pound podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Pound for Pound podcast, and make sure you tune in for the next episode. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Pound for Pound podcast.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, baby.
It's early over here in the morning. I had to wake up here for a second. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, bless you, man. Mo.
Thank you, Mo.
See you soon.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you
Cheers,
for your time.
boys.
And we'll catch up very soon, man. We've got a busy year ahead.
Yes, sir. Amen. Glad to be on it, guys. I'll see you guys soon.